Boom, boom, boom. All right, everybody. Let's see. Let me know if there are any audio issues. We got a new microphone up in the cut here, so want to make sure that audio is okay. It seemed all right when I checked it, but you never know. We'll wait for some people to get in here. I apologize if I get any berry seeds in my teeth because I'm sipping my pre-workout smoothie over here. But you know, you got to be efficient with time, and sometimes you got to do two things at once. So right now we'll be fueling as we get to this live stream here. So thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate everybody who sent videos to review, and we'll be getting into it just very shortly. As you can see on the screen here, we got, let's see, I think 22 different videos. Like I said, I appreciate everybody who sent something in here. We got definitely some good stuff to look at. I haven't really delved into the videos too much, so as I go through them, it'll be it'll be fresh for both of us. So my goal with this is, give you some basic things you could think about, or, if I see something that sticks out, give you kind of the big ticket items that I think are going to be most helpful to you. And, obviously, there's only so much we can cover when we got a bunch of videos to go over, but the goal is to hopefully help you out a little bit, give you some simple things to work on. And then, even if you didn't submit a video yourself, you can still learn, because as you're seeing something on the screen that I'm pointing out, then that might be something that you see in your own video. So let's see. I got some cat battles going on in the other room, but all right, so let's jump into it, shall we? And I assume audio is good because nobody's complained yet about it, so I apologize if you hear some screaming cats in the background. My girlfriend's out of town, and so they're feeling extra needy. And sometimes that comes in the form of yelling at me. And I'm going to shut the door. Okay. Hopefully they shut up, but whatever. All right, so our first video we got here from a channel member. This is from Roy Eckel. I appreciate you being on here. So let's take a look at this video here. First, we'll just play it through. Looks like he's going over some wickets. All right, let's watch it again. So I would say overall this looks pretty good. With your arm, so up here, okay, this arm, it's coming a little bit high. Typically when we're sprinting, we get our hand to about shoulder level, about to the tip of the acromion, which are these bumpy bones at the top of your shoulder that you might have. I would say, if it feels natural to get your arm up this high as it is here, then that's totally fine. But if you feel like you're actually trying to get the arm up there and you're really working to get it up there, you could maybe relax a little bit and just sort of let the arm go through the range of motion that happens naturally. But if this does happen naturally, that's fine. Some people do feel better with a forward and upward type of movement of the arm, whereas some feel a little bit better with a downward and backward, timing that attack into the ground as your foot's attacking the ground, that your arm is swinging down and attacking the ground. So some people feel a little bit better with that, but let's watch it again here. So I like that we got the knees together here at approximately mid-stance phase. I like that you're pulling the foot through here and that your foot is staying, you know, somewhat vertical. It's not, your foot is not, like the base of your spike plate is not facing up, which is good. You're getting a nice bend in the knee. So when we sprint, you know, if you're trying to swing the leg through and the leg is at a really open or obtuse angle, that's going to be really hard to swing that leg through. So I like what Roy is doing here. He's got this nice tight angle of the knee as he's swinging through, and that bent knee with the foot not coming up to the butt exactly, but swinging through like this, how the shin is parallel to the ground. I really like how this looks. Now at toe off, let's see. Getting very parallel to the ground with your thigh, which is fine. I would just say you don't need to try and do this. I'm not saying that you are, but some people try to get their knees up really high. The knee drive should happen reactively as a result of striking the ground with a lot of power, because with a lot of force, when you strike the ground really forcefully and you get all this stretch on all these, you know, muscles of the front of that stance leg, that's going to help whip that leg through up to the, you know, to the front side. And so as the harder and, you know, more aggressively that you attack the ground, the more aggressive your knee drive is going to be. Instead of just driving the knee intentionally, it kind of happens naturally as a result of how much force you're putting into the ground. Let's see. So I would say right here, this is looking a little bit open compared to what I would prefer. So I can't totally tell because of I don't know if it's the angle that the camera was at, but it does look like, you know, you are very upright, but it's possible that you're bordering on being almost too upright, if that makes sense. You know, if we're perfectly upright, we'll be here, but as we start to try to get even more upright, we might start to lean back. I'm not saying you're leaning back here, but when I see this start to kick open at this point, you know, that's just something you want to monitor a little bit, because here's your chest and you're contacting way out here. So I would say you want to be cognizant of making sure that your posture is vertical or even just very, very slightly forward, because that's going to help make sure that as you're coming through here, that this leg does not swing open prematurely and instead just drives down. So I would say for you, the main thing, you know, you're doing very well overall, so there's really not that much to fix, but just keep really focusing on putting force down into the ground and really striking down. Don't try to reach forward and, you know, let that leg swing open too much because sometimes that can lead to striking in front of the body, and that puts a lot of stress on the hamstrings and can, you know, be a risk for injury. So just make sure you're putting force down and striking the ground, picking the foot back up, and just being very up and down at maximal velocity. And I think you'll be good to go. So that's Roy. Let's see. Let me check on the old stream here. We got some people in here still. It's nice to see. All right, we're going to move on to the next video here. So here we got Tori. Tori is going to be in lane 2. And let's check it out. So getting in the blocks here. All right, they're going to get set here momentarily. And then we'll see what happens. So the first thing is it's possible, and we'll have to wait and see what happens on the first step. But to me, you know, this is a very aggressive knee angle, pretty low, so you're kind of flat relative to the ground. I would say you probably want to rise up a little higher in the set position. So maybe get your hips up maybe here instead of being here. Okay, so we want to get the hips up a little bit higher. And that's going to help open up this knee a little bit. And realistically, you know, unless you're really, really strong with deep squats, most sprinters are going to be at their strongest when their knee is around 90 degrees or even more open than that. So here, your knee looks like it's bent, your knee looks like it's bent further than 90 degrees, which is really hard to come out from. Now, some people can do it, but for me, it's hard. And for a lot of other people, that's hard to explode out from. But let's watch what happens. Yep. So I think the key here for you, Tori, is going to be like see how your hips rise. Your hips are rising because your body's trying to find this angle. This is the angle that your body wants to push out from right here. Right? And that's closer to that 90 or just beyond, a little more obtuse than 90 degrees in that front knee. And so that's why you're seeing a lot of hip rising before it goes forward. So your hip is kind of coming up and then it starts to come forward. So I would say when you're in your set position, just make sure you're rising up a little bit higher. You might have to adjust your blocks a little bit to make it feel comfortable, but I think as long as you get your hips a little bit higher, you're going to eliminate this period from here to here, and instead you'll just fire out. And from there, I mean, like this step right here, boom, you're getting some projection, you're striking down actively, you're in a good position, your eyes are looking forward. I really like how this is. I think this is a good second and third step here. So as long as you allow yourself to get into a position that's conducive for you to produce a lot of force and launch out of the blocks by getting your hips a little bit higher in the set position, so we eliminate this movement here, and you can just, instead of moving up before you move forward, you can just launch out. I think that's going to help your start. And judging by how these next few steps look, I think that's going to put you, a little bit further out, closer to everybody else, and you're going to have a much better shot at, running the times that you want to see. So let's just work on getting these hips a little bit higher in the set position and see how that goes. So that's Tori. Thank you, Tori. All right. Once again, thank you guys for all being here. All right, now we got Eric, or Eirik. So I'm just going to say Eirik because E-I-R sounds like Eirik to me. So Eirik, him and his dad had sent me some film a couple weeks ago, and I did like a longer breakdown. So typically when I'm breaking down film for people when they're on my website and they buy a consultation for me to review their film, I break it down. It takes me like 30 to 60 minutes. I record a long thing talking about all the little details. So we've already worked together a little bit, and I'm interested to see how things have changed. So let's see. Yeah, this is a lot better. This is some good progress here. So before, Eirik was sort of just stepping out of the blocks. So instead of right here, how he's launching out, he's projecting out, and then he's striking back. Boom, striking back. That's what we want to see. Now I would say you're probably a little bit low as far as, move this around here a little bit. So I would say this angle of your chest, we want to get more in line with the angle that you're driving out here. So maybe you could maybe get your chest up a little bit, but it's nothing too extreme. But I think it's just going to make it a little bit easier to feel yourself continuing to project up and up as you go. Because when we sprint, what we're doing out of the blocks is sort of pushing ourselves to a more vertical position each step. So we're slowly but surely getting more vertical, and we're pushing ourselves up. So even though, you know, we've been told oh, we need to stay low and everything, staying low is more a result of how much force you're putting out, and how quickly you're able to get that force down to keep projecting yourself forward. So we don't want to artificially get low by just, you know, holding our chest down and staying low. We want to be able to project out and up and maintain a nice angle from as we push. You know, say we're pushing into the ground with our foot like this. We don't want our back to then be like that. We want our back to be, you know, in line with the leg. But that's just a minor thing here. I'd say, you know, just don't try to stay low. Allow yourself to rise as you accelerate. Now, oops, I get my controls here. So this stride looks a little rushed. And sometimes going low and rushing kind of go hand in hand. But I like how you're getting up here. So I really like this. This looks good to me. You're looking toward the finish line. You have good posture. Arms are coming up to the shoulder. This arm's getting more open than 90. This leg's coming up almost to parallel. I think it looks pretty good. One thing you could probably work on, which might come as a result of allowing yourself to rise, you know, like let's see. So I think until you get a little bit stronger, which like we talked about is going to happen over time, I would say you can get up a little bit more and kind of start finding the finish line maybe somewhere around here, which you are, which is nice to see. And just make sure that you're letting your body go through full range of motion. So right here, it looks like you're cutting off. This arm swing is a little bit cut off. It looks like you could probably get your elbow to swing a little bit more forward. And it's not that you're going to try to do that. It's just by letting your arms go through full range of motion and getting as much of that propulsive push out of this ground strike, instead of rushing into the next stride and trying to be too quick, I think you'll feel a little bit better. But once you get going, you know, I think that it looks pretty good, honestly. Slow it down a little. Yeah, you're getting good vertical projection off the ground, covering ground. So just keep honing in those angles and making sure that when you come out of the blocks, you know, you're getting a nice angle of whatever your leg is pushing at. You want to make sure your torso is pretty close to that. We don't want to be, you know, bent over forward if our leg is like this, and we also don't want to have our leg pushing back and then standing straight up with our torso, right? We want to find an angle that's similar, so that way we can drive through our spine and our leg. We can drive force into the ground and have our body be in a good, you know, efficient position. I think we got one more. This will be nice to see because I wanted to see that angle. So we'll look at this real quick. I really like these homemade blocks though. Look at this. This is ingenuity right here. You don't have to spend $300 on a pair of blocks. You could just build some. Let's see. So we got a pretty good angle here. He's not looking down. He's looking kind of out and forward, which is good. We're getting full range of motion of the arms. So I would say from here, this is where we want to just attack back into the ground. Okay, we don't see how this foot goes from here and then it swings forward a little bit. And then this one kind of comes out in front too. See how this is in front of the hips? So I would just say you want to get up to a high enough angle so that way you can strike back right once you reach max hip flexion like you are here. From here we want to strike back instead of letting it swing out and forward. And then same thing here, we want to strike back as opposed to, see this forward movement of the foot right here? See that? Before it comes back? That's a result of trying to be a little too low. So just don't worry about being too low, Iric. I would just say launch out, try to get at an angle that maybe just a little bit higher, so maybe get your head here instead of here. And that's going to allow you to strike back into the ground and attack back into the ground. And then I think if you can attack back and get to the point where you're in a postural position that's a little bit higher, that allows you to attack back into the ground, your acceleration is going to be more efficient, and it's going to lead to better things down the track. But good progress, Iric. I really like what I see. You've made some great improvements in a very short period of time. So I think that's great. I'm going to take another sip here real quick. MJ, thank you for signing up as a member. You the man. Or the woman. I don't know. MJ, I can't quite tell, but either way, thank you very much. All right. Move on to the next here. Now we got Blake Reynolds. Blake is an OG viewer on the channel. He's been around for quite a while, so I greatly appreciate you, Blake. So we got Blake out here in lane 7. Let's just watch it and then we'll go back and... Oh, I got a little wild with the zoom here, my bad. Let me start over here. All right, so Blake, we're watching lane 7 right here. Okay. Okay. Main thing I see here. Blake, it looks like, you have the potential to run fast, okay? You've got the limb velocity, like the stride frequency. You have good stride frequency capabilities, judging by what I can see here. But the main thing I see is that you're trying to be too horizontal. So if you think about it, say we're running on the ground here, and we have our foot on the ground, and then we have a foot out here. This is not drawn to scale, but we're not here for my art skills, are we? We're here for the sprinting. So this great stick figure here. We could just try to strike straight down, and then pick the knee straight up, or alternatively, if you let's watch your legs here. So this position here is very open, which tells me that you're probably, once you're here, you're trying to push back. And you're trying to generate a lot of horizontal force in this last part. Like from here to here, it looks like you're really trying to push, which during early acceleration is not necessarily bad, but when we're in upright sprinting, the problem is that when we try to really push, by the time that we've felt the ground, and by the time after we've felt the ground that we've been able to send the signal to push, it's too late. We're almost, when we sprint, we have to anticipate what's coming rather than react to what's already happened, because it's happening so quickly, we really don't have time. So as you push here, your body from here to here, your foot is no longer on the ground, but your knee and your angle of hip extension, your hip extension has not turned into then hip flexion, right? because you're trying to push back and you're locked into extending through the glute here, not just the glute, but you're using the glutes, the hamstrings, the calves, you're really trying to extend and push backward. That makes it so that you're not able to reverse this leg forward, and instead you get this lag time right here where this leg is not doing anything. You're not generating force into the ground, but you're also not initiating the next stride by bringing the leg forward, right? And because we're pushing back behind us, this leg has to swing out forward to counteract it, because whatever this leg does this way, this leg has to counteract it in the opposite direction, right? And so we end up in this very open kind of position here. And then obviously now your hip flexor's like, oh crap, we got to get this leg forward. And this leg's trying to come down, but because it's so far out in front, you're now landing further in front of the chest than we want to. Maybe this foot should be like here instead of where it is. So maybe a third of a foot or a half a foot back. You don't have to worry about that as much as just we want to be striking the ground straight down. Okay, just drive that leg straight down under you and then pick it back up. So you want to put the foot down, drive the knee up, pick the foot down, or pick the foot up, put the foot down. But we want to get more vertical in our movements here, so that way we're not over pushing behind us. Because in sprinting, say that the stance phase, imagine that this is time, okay? So this is time. As your foot hits the ground, let's say this is the time of the stance phase here, okay? 80% of the force you produce is going to be in the first half of ground contact, and only 20% is produced in the second half of ground contact. But when we're more horizontally oriented, which is a very, very common thing, extremely common, especially in younger guys, what happens is we're trying to, instead of produce 80% of the force for that stride in the first half of ground contact right here, you're producing more of that force in the back half of ground contact, which skews everything to that longer thing here. You end up not having the leg reverse forward as soon as possible. So each stride from here to here, this is time that you're kind of losing, because that time could have been dedicated toward initiating the next stride and getting this leg to cycle through, but instead it's just hanging out, right? Which then puts us in a worse position to produce force here, because we have to overcome that and then now try to push again. So I would say for you, Blake, really the key, and this is something that is actually one of the, I don't want to say it's one of the easier things to work on, but I think it's one of the more fixable issues with sprinting, is just, work on being a little bit more vertical with your movements. So driving the knee up, putting the foot down, striking vertically, attacking vertically, just getting your brain to be more oriented, vertical along the body. Now, important to note, if you're accelerating and your body's at an angle like this, you should be pushing in the ground vertical relative to the body, right? So we should be striking in line with the body, and then picking the knee up and picking the foot up in line with the body as well. But once we're upright, what's that going to look like? Like this. So just remember that whether your body is at an angle like this because you're accelerating, or your body's at an angle like this because you're in upright sprinting, we always want to be driving the knee, or rather striking the ground, and then picking the leg up and feeling like it's in line with the body. That way you don't have to do anything different in acceleration. All you do is raise your posture, but your movements pretty much stay the same. You're always striking in line with the body. And if you do that, I think you're going to drop this time significantly, especially if you practice this, say, you take a little time off after the season, maybe you take a month off, and then you start bringing in drills, some, kind of easy sprints and things like that, and then maybe some work in the gym, like maybe some of your jumps or step ups, things like that, you really focus on up and down motion in line with your body, that's going to lead to some major gains and decreases in your times. So I would definitely, look at this as something that's you can improve on significantly, just because what's happening is making it harder for you. Like you're making yourself have to work harder. And if you just get to be more vertically oriented, like look at this guy over here, okay? Let's take a look at this guy. Look at his motion. Knee comes up, leg strikes down. Okay? He does have a little bit of that residual phase we don't want to see. Residual phase is the time from when your toe comes off the ground, so at toe off, the time between toe off and when your knee starts moving forward and you start flexing that hip, that's called the residual phase. And the residual phase gets lengthened when we are pushing back into the ground too much. Like here. That's the residual phase. So we want to eliminate that residual phase, get this knee driving, forward and up sooner, and that's going to come as a result of being more, up and down or vertically oriented or vertically biased in your movements. Drive the knee up, put the foot down, drive the knee up, put the foot down, swing the arm down, swing the arm up. Whatever resonates with you, whether it's up or down, just focus on that more so than trying to reach and push. We want to eliminate the reach and push and instead be more lift up the hammer, strike the nail, lift the hammer, strike the nail. Hope that makes sense. All right, let me just check in here, make sure you guys are all good in here. All right, now let's move on to the next one. So thanks, Blake. Appreciate you. Hopefully this helps. Let me take a sip of my smoothie over here. And we almost sent some smoothie flying. All right, now we're going to go to Fast Like Leo. Fast Like Leo is from Instagram. This is a slow-mo. Pretty good. Okay, so like I was talking about in the last one, how we want to eliminate the residual phase. This is a good example of how right when his toe's coming off the ground, right here, you can see that the knee is starting to come forward. So as the foot comes off, notice that this angle is, not extreme. It's not like his leg's like back here. And then he's starting to bring this leg forward and bring the knee up as this leg is striking down. So see how this is just coming straight down pretty much? He's got the knees together as the foot's approaching the ground. So he's making efficient use of his strides. He's got this nice figure 4 pattern. Posture's good, eyes are good. He's got good ankle mobility. I mean, honestly, Leo, I think this looks pretty good. So I would just say, make sure that you're not overdoing it on the frequency as far as increasing your frequency to the point that you cut off your range of motion. So this looks good. It's just important that we always manage, an optimal amount of stride frequency, which I think this looks pretty optimal. But don't worry about trying to ramp it up even more from here, I think this looks good as is, so there's not much that I would really say to change or anything like that. Make sure your arms are relaxed, but they look pretty good. So honestly, I know it's not that helpful to just say this looks good, but I think it looks pretty good. But we do have a front view, which I did want to cover real quick. So this is Leo as well. We got to go a little bit further into the video. So I would say, and this is why you guys want to look at your film from multiple angles. So from the side you might look good, or from the front you might look good, but then on the other one you might see some things that are worth considering. So one thing I see is a little bit of this lateral movement of the foot. So from like here, from here, your foot comes out to like here, or maybe not quite that far, but can you guys see what I mean? It's almost like the foot's coming out a little bit. So just make sure that in your strength training, you're doing a little bit of basic stuff to keep the adductors healthy. It could be as simple as attach a cable machine to your ankle, and just, adduct and let that leg come in and out. There's nothing wrong with this. It's just sometimes when you get into this where you get the leg kind of almost curving out or stepping out to the side as you sprint, it's something that I've done quite a bit. And for me, occasionally that leads to some adductor issues or some like stuff high up in the groin. So just make sure you're doing a little strengthening work on your adductors. So that way, in the event that you do step out to the side a little bit more than usual, your adductors are strong enough to handle it. But once again, there's really not a whole lot that I could say you need to that is drastically in need of fixing. So Leo, I would say this is pretty good. Just do a little adductor strengthening work. All right, moving on to the next here. Good time for Passwell or Poswell to step into the chat, because now we're going to look at his video. Alrighty. So you are in lane 3. 1, 2, 3. Looks like right here. Okay. So we're not going to see the start, but that's okay. Let's just watch it. Alrighty. So let's see. Sorry, my computer's working real hard over here to manage all this. Okay. So we're looking right here. I'm going to slow it down a little bit. So the first thing I notice is it looks like you're kind of bouncy as far as your head and stuff. So let's pay attention to your head. Whoa, pay attention to your head. See how it looks kind of like it's kind of bobbing and weaving? To me, that tells me that you're probably trying really hard, working really hard to try to get everything you can. So I would just first start with focus on trying to be relaxed and feeling smooth, rather than trying to grit and get every possible ounce of force out. And first find what it feels like to be stable and have your body kind of maintain stability with the head and your posture and everything. I would say your arms. See how your arms are kind of they're kind of spiraling around. Watch this. Watch this arm. See how it goes forward, and then it kind of karate chops in, and then it goes out. So I would, once again, just find a smooth range of motion. If you watch Carl Lewis's arms when he sprints, and I would visualize trying to mimic that sort of movement and that sort of fluidity. Because the thing is it's hard to put force down. Like, even if you're really strong, it's hard to put force down effectively if it's not controlled. You know, if you're just going as hard as you can and it leads to kind of flailing around, you might put your foot down, but your foot's not going to be in the right position because you're trying so hard that you can't, you know, feel putting it under you in an efficient manner. So I would say, first, just focus on being smooth, having good posture, getting those arms to be in a nice, smooth, straight forward and back type of motion. And if you have access to a gym, you know, you could probably be doing some strength work in there, because it just looks like your force production is probably not as high as you're capable of. I think you're probably capable of being a little bit more forceful. And now as you get fatigued, you know, you start kind of reaching, getting pretty backside. So like I would listen to the part that where I was talking before on Blake's video, which was just a couple before. Because once again, just like we talked about, you're trying to push back, right? And then this leg extends out in front, and then it's kind of swinging back like this. Instead, we want to strike down and then pick the foot back up, pick the knee back up, and be more up and down relative to the body. So like we talked about before, we don't want to overemphasize that backward push right here. We don't want to emphasize this backward push. We want to just strike straight into the ground and then pick that foot and that knee right back up. Like if you watch this guy right here, see how he's striking down? See, this is down. From here to here, down, down, down. This is coming down, right? So we want to get more like that, I would say. Surprised this guy didn't fall over. But Paswell, I would say just, you know, overall on your video, you're back here. Start by working on being smooth and fluid in your practices, not being all over the place. Do some strength work, maybe some sleds, some step-ups, leg press, things like that to get a little bit stronger. And then also make sure that you're focusing on striking the ground vertically and picking the leg back up in line with your body. So if this is your spine, we want to strike the ground in line with the body. Strike down with the foot and then pick it back up, okay? Hope that makes sense. Alrighty. And if anyone sends a super chat, I'll answer it later. Just so you know. If I miss it right now, I'll get back to it. But there's none right now, so that's okay. Alright. Now we got Marius from Germany, I think. Got a block start here. So let's take a look. So one thing I would say is, whenever we're doing blocks, when we're in the on your marks position right here, we want to make sure our shoulders are directly over the line. You're going to see his shoulders move forward as he comes up into set. But we want to make sure that our arm from here straight up to our shoulder. Okay? Because otherwise, if you move forward as you're rising into set, sometimes that can cause a little bit of forward momentum and cause people to false start or feel unstable and, you know, lose a little bit of pressure from the blocks. So first thing is just for all of us, make sure that your arms are here while your knees are still on the ground, rather than your arm moving forward or your shoulders moving forward as you rise into set. Because say you misjudged your forward movement here, it would be easy to fall out and false start. but that's just a minor technicality here. So I would say, similar to what we talked about earlier, I would say you should probably get your hips, instead of being here, maybe get them like here. That's going to give you a slightly more open knee angle. Because what's your body doing when it wants to go? Once you decide to go, what's happening? It's trying to push up, right? Hips are coming up before we move forward. So instead of rising up before we move forward and losing that time, because if someone's next to you and you're rising up while they're pushing out, you know, that's time that you're missing. So instead, let's rise a little bit higher into set position. Get this knee a little bit more open. So maybe instead of that angle, it's more like that. So that way, you're here from the set position and you can just, boom, fire out. Now the other thing, like we talked about with Iric, is we want to get to an angle here. We want this angle to be high enough that we're able to strike back into the ground immediately. So once we reach this point of hip flexion, okay, your hips maximally flexed, there's no more hip flexion left, we want to immediately reverse the leg into the ground. But if we're too low, our foot has to swing forward to support ourselves, and we crash. You can see this crash. Look at this right here. Boom. Crash. And then you overcome it and you push and you're okay, you know. But then the same thing sort of happens on the next step. So I think all around for you, Marius, is hips a little bit higher, which is going to give you a slightly more open knee angle. Maybe like that. And from there, we want to push a little bit higher. Okay. So that way, we can then immediately strike back into the ground. Same thing from here. You know, you'll want to push your body up. And then, boom, strike back. If you find that you're not able to get that immediate strike back, like right here, how it's kind of your foot from here is moving forward instead of striking back, that tells me that you're probably pushing a little bit too, you know, horizontally, and instead you should feel yourself get a little bit off the ground, and that's going to make it easier to strike down reactively in that next stride. All right, I'm going to take another sip here. I probably have smoothie on my face now, but I apologize. It's uncouth of me to have smoothie on my face while I live stream, but sometimes we just got to do what we got to do, right? All right, now we got Niall. He's on Instagram as River Performance. Let's slow it down here. This is more like it. And by the way, if you guys see anything, feel free to add it into the chat. So I think, you know, you're going to start to see that a lot of the issues that athletes have are going to be similar. You know, it's very common to be more horizontally oriented with how we push, and it's very common to crash forward with the foot. So here, got the foot kind of crashing. So we see how the foot from here, it's sort of crashing forward into the ground. And then this arm It looks to me like your movements are just a little bit closed off. See how there's really not much of a gap here between the elbow and the torso? There's not a very big gap. Let's see how it looks here. Once again, elbow is pretty much in line with the torso instead of getting that arm a little bit more in front. So I think for you, Niall, I think allowing your body to go through a full range of motion and feeling what that's like at maybe 85-90%, just allowing your shoulders and your hips to open up a little bit more. And then from there, from that more open position, using that full range of motion to generate a lot of force into that next stride, I think would be good for you, because this knee will come up higher as you put more force into the ground. And I think it's a little bit easier to put force into the ground if you're going through the full range of motion. So I would just say, let your arms open up a little bit more, let your knee drive a little bit more, and feel what that's like. Maybe work on it in some drills like A walks or A skips, things like that. And then, you can kind of transition that into the sprinting. But this just looks a little bit closed off, in my opinion, as far as your ranges of motion and everything. And because it's closed off, you might not be producing as much force as you're capable of, which means you're going to crash into the ground a little bit sooner, as opposed to putting a little bit more force into the ground, getting more up into the air and covering more ground, which will give you time to reorient your limbs and then strike down into the ground. You're running out of time because you're not getting as much displacement off the ground. Obviously, you can, work on strength and all that, but I would mainly focus on allowing your body to open up a little bit more. Maybe at night you could do a little bit of stretching and things like that if you feel like you want to, but more importantly is going to be just letting yourself open up more when you're doing drills, warm-up runs, accelerations, all that stuff. You could maybe do some step-ups where you're getting onto a slightly higher box than maybe what you're comfortable with. Not a high load or anything like that, but just to work on getting through those ranges of motion and opening up those hips, opening up your shoulders. That's what I would really suggest for you. All right, we got Jacob Lee. This looks pretty good. So I think this looks pretty darn good, man. I would just say, let's see, that's good. So you see how he's launching out, and then immediately driving the knee forward, immediately striking down with this leg. Wish these controls were a little bit easier. All right. He's hitting the ground in a good position. Right under or slightly behind his hips even. Same thing. Good. Now the one thing is right here. I would say this, see how it opens up and kicks forward? And now you're striking in front of the hips. You probably just want to manage that a little bit. So just pay attention to it and do your best to stay within, this sort of striking in line with the body, getting the shin to stay in line with the body rather than it swinging forward before it comes back. You'll see more of this swinging forward maybe at like 10 or 20 meters, but right now on your third step or whatever, you probably still want to be striking back I don't know if it has to do with hamstring strength or not, but I would make sure that you have some good hamstring strength, single leg back extensions, 2 up, 1 down leg curls, RDLs, Nordic curls, all that stuff. You don't have to do like massive amounts of it, but just make sure that it's there, because if your hamstrings are lacking strength and this angular momentum of the foot overcomes your hamstrings, sometimes they can battle it out and sometimes the hamstrings will lose. So I think your start looks like, almost as good as they get. But we just want to make sure that this motion of bringing the knee forward, keeping that knee kind of closed off and striking back continues on and doesn't drastically change from here. Because from this motion of this front leg here is drastically different than this. So just try to maintain this, or transition from this motion to this motion, transition a little bit over a little bit longer of a distance, so that you're not getting that leg opening up on step 3. But, I mean, overall, this is quite a good start. So thank you, Jacob. All right, we're going to look at Alex's here, but let me just double check. Okay, I just wanted to make sure we had all the ones that I thought we had. That's right, Zambuza. I'm definitely staying hydrated over here. Yeah, Adam, I think you're right. I think, let me go back to this video real quick. And also, ankle strength definitely comes to mind. And then it's also, like on this one, this is the one where it kicks out and then he lands in front. So think about, if you're landing in front of your body here, think of how much all this weight is going to be pushing down through this lever here. And how is this lever going to be able to maintain this position? Because our joint systems are just, they're levers. With all this force pushing straight down, with the foot here, it's very hard to maintain this angle. And as you can see, boom, it drops, right? As the mass, the center of mass passes over this point of support, this lever has to give way. So it's both a matter of making sure we're strong enough in the ankle, bent leg calf raises, sleds, certain types of jumping activities, things like that. But also, we could be as strong as an ox, but if we were to contact with our foot like way out here, we would never be able to maintain that angle. It's just anatomically impossible. So want to make sure you're strong in the ankle with strengthening exercises, as well as putting the foot in a position that is conducive to maintaining that angle. Those together are a magic combination. If you're strong enough, forceful enough, and you put your body in the right position, you will project yourself off the ground, your ankle won't collapse and all that. So definitely a good point, Adam. What's up, Samar? Nice to see you here. Happy Saturday to you too. If you guys haven't checked out Samar's Instagram profiles, definitely check him out. He's got ATHLETE.X, I believe, and he's also got his own personal channel. So throw those in there so everyone can follow you, Samar. Put them in the chat if you want. People can find you. Let's see. All right, we got Alex Un here. Alex is another longtime viewer of the channel. Thank you, Alex. I think he's targeting the 400. Now, it is tough to run on concrete, so we got to give this man some props for putting in the work no matter what the facilities are. So it looks like you're working pretty hard with your arms. I would say, because you're running a longer sprint, it's going to be very hard to finish if there's any inefficiencies early on. So you're finishing strongly for sure. But from the start here, let's watch it. We'll slow it down a little bit. And obviously this is on concrete. It's not going to look quite the same as it would on a track and spikes and all that. So we got to give a little bit of leeway, considering those factors. But you're definitely aggressive with the arms early, which in the first few steps, it's no problem. But I would say as you get into your running, because you're a 400 runner, you want to settle into a mental space of some peace, if that makes sense. If you're feeling threatened in your head when you're running a 400, that's going to manifest physically as trying to work harder. You're going to be less efficient physically, and it's going to make it harder to run. So I know that is not a technical thing, but at the same time, I think our mentality impacts our technique. If I go into a race and I'm all stressed out, not saying you're stressed out, but just this is a concept I think is important. If you go into a race and you're stressed out, your technique is probably going to reflect that. If you go into a race and you're confident and you're just like, yep, I'm gonna blow it out of the park or whatever, it's going to be different. So particularly relevant to the 400, because it's, if you're looking around the track and thinking, man, I got to run that whole race, I got to run that far. If there's any inefficiencies, it's going to be real hard. So my first suggestion is just mentally, as you're accelerating and you're getting into upright running, which is the majority of the 400, find some space of mental peace, so that way you can stay relaxed, stay rhythmic, focus on the plan of running the race, and then it'll probably be a little bit easier. So let's see here. Let's take a look. Zoom in, because this is a nice side view here. Slow it down a little more. So I think, like we talked about before, just make sure you're focusing on picking the foot up, initiating that next stride. Because this right here, let's see if you can see it. I would say, even though you're a 400 runner, we still want to get this leg coming through a little bit sooner. See how when you're on the ground, this knee, there's like a gap between your knees. You're not going to look like a 100-meter sprinter when you're running the 400, but we still want to have the same kind of idea of striking up and down in line with the body. Once we're done putting force into the ground, we want to immediately start bringing this leg forward and up to the front side. You want to try to let your arms just sort of go, not, trying to keep them in a certain tight range of motion or anything like that. Just let your arms flow. And just make sure that you're not trying to push back too much, because 1, 2, 3, let's see. So you're done. There's no more force being produced. When you're at this position with your leg, there's no more force being produced into the ground. So from here, we got 1, 2, maybe about 2 frames, 1.5 frames where the foot's coming up, but the leg is not cycling forward yet. So just pay attention to that. Make sure you're not trying to push back too much, okay? And that once you're done with that ground contact, we want to initiate that next stride by getting that knee forward and get that leg to swing forward. But I think you have a pretty solid finish. So I would imagine your endurance is, not bad. Just stay, you know, like I said, when you come out of your acceleration, make sure that you're at peace mentally with the pain that you're about to endure running 400. And then make sure you're not trying to push back behind you too much. Keep everything up and down. You know, if you watch Michael Johnson, he was very condensed with his movements. He didn't waste any movements. So maybe you could watch some of his running, and not that you're going to try to mimic him, but there are things to learn with putting the foot down, picking the foot up, keeping everything kind of condensed when you're running the 400, so you're not, you know, each step wasting any movement by pushing back behind you, which makes the leg lag behind you, not get to the front side, and not initiate the next stride soon enough. Let's see. Yeah, I think my girlfriend's in here. Unless that's a different different Jay Yates. All right. Let's check out Dawson's video. Looks pretty good. What do you guys think? I think this looks pretty solid. Slow it down. So notice how his hips do not go up like the other examples where we were talking about you know, your body's going to try to find the position it wants to be in. He's pretty much just pushing straight out from here, so that's good. Nice aggressive angle. Everything's in line. And then look, right as he's done pushing, what's happening? What do you see? What happens here? Boom, moves forward. What happens here? Starts getting ready to strike into the ground. Okay? So this is really efficient. There's no wasted time, right? Once he's done pushing, which is basically right here, boom, knee is coming forward. You see this? Knee is now there. So this is really efficient. So Dawson, you probably run a pretty good 60. And look at this posture. This is good stuff. Contact point, basically right under the hips. So yeah, I mean, I think your start is quite good, man. I would like to see what your upright sprinting looks like, Dawson, but acceleration looks good. The only thing I would say is if your arms feel a bit rushed, just sort of let them do their thing. Don't feel like you got to cut them short or anything like that. But honestly, I wouldn't. If I was coaching you in person, I would not be changing anything in your start right now. So for the sake of everybody else, when I'm talking about eliminating that residual phase and making sure that we're not over pushing, he's clearly pushing horizontally, right? But it's vertical it's, you know, in line with the body. This leg is going to go where? Like that. Boom. In line with the body. And then now the body's here, and what's this leg going to do? In line with the body. And right as he's done putting force into the ground, because he's taking advantage of that first part of ground contact to put a lot of force, and clearly his ankles are very strong, he's not over pushing, he's not letting the leg lag behind him. From here, the leg is not going like this, it's going forward, which allows him to get to that next stride sooner. So this is good stuff. Props to you. Yeah, it does look like a little bit cut off as far as like he might not be getting as much horizontal projection as possible. But the angles all line up. And I've known some sprinters who, especially guys who aren't like super muscular. I'm not saying that you're not strong or anything like that, man. I'm just saying like people who don't look like Harry Akins. Sometimes those sprinters aren't going to cover as much ground early in the sprint. Uh-oh. Did we lose my... Oh, no. Webcam down. This thing die on me? Let's see if we can get it back here. RIP to the GoPro. Well, I don't know if it overheated. Yeah, sorry guys. You're not going to be able to stare at my face for the rest of the stream, but that's okay. It'll allow us to focus a little bit more on the the video itself. So sorry about that. But anyways, RIP GoPro. All right, so like I was saying, sometimes sprinters who aren't you know, like fully force-driven athletes aren't going to necessarily cover as much ground each step. But I do like how the angles are lining up. So like I said, I'd like to see what happens later in the sprint to see if there's any inhibited range of motion, but definitely pretty efficient, albeit maybe a little lacking on the stride length. All right, now we got Ibrahim Abakar, or Abakar. Let's see. So Ibrahim looks pretty good. Your head might be a little bit out in front as far as, like, it looks like you're kind of trying to keep your head down. See what I mean? How the head's kind of being forced down right here. So really I'd want to see your head just sitting on top of your spine, kind of in a natural position here. I struggle with doing this myself, so that's why I mention it, because the problem is, as you know, if you can get everything to line up well with your ground strikes and everything, it's not that much of an issue. But what happens when our head goes from here to here? Well, our center of mass goes from maybe here to here, which is going to affect what happens when we put our foot down in a certain position. Wherever we put it, you know, it has to be put down while taking into account where our center of mass is. Not that you're thinking about that when you sprint, but I'm just trying to explain that as your head, the more your head comes forward, the more your center of mass is going to come forward too. But I mean, you look pretty fast, man. So I think ultimately this is pretty good. I would just try to, you know, let yourself rise up. Try not to let your head stay so low. Let your head be in line with your spine, and maybe be looking, instead of looking with your eyes right here, maybe you start looking out here. So that way, by the time you're upright, you can be looking at the finish line. And that's going to make sure that all your body segments are lined up in just a way that is, you know, not going to cause any disruption. And your body's not going to have to overcompensate for any shift in your center of mass. So like right here, I'd like to see your head more maybe like that. But everything else looks pretty good. I think if your head was here, you know, you might be striking, your foot strike might change a little bit, but I would just try that. Get your head up. Other than that, it looks, you know, looks pretty good. Let's watch it in full speed again. See if chat has anything to say. Yeah, the GoPro did just run a 400 and RIP GoPro. That's the thing, man. You know, you want to get into filming stuff and you buy a camera and then it takes a dump on you. It's like, was it worth it? Yeah, I think this is pretty good. Just get your head up and in line with your spine. Abhishek. See what we got here. Slow the video down. First step looks pretty good. Second step looks pretty good. You see how right as he's done pushing, boom, those legs are switching positions. Front leg is driving down and back. Back leg is not over pushing. The only thing is it might be a little bit quick as far as you could probably get a little bit more stride length out of it if you are, you know, patient with that force production, but I don't want to nitpick too much. Now, so here we've got his head is still slightly down, sort of like Ibrahim. But look what happens. This leg just comes straight down and goes flat. So I think, and it happens again. So I think there's something going on where I think this left leg might be pushing a little bit too horizontally as opposed to projecting yourself up a little bit more, because that foot then comes flat. So I would just try to stay patient. Don't try to stay down so much with your torso and head. Allow your torso and head to be in line a little bit more with the leg, because we want to make sure we're eliminating this flat foot forward reaching motion. Okay, this is going to be a cause for either a hamstring or a groin injury. It's not very efficient. So I'd maybe work on some hamstring strength work, as well as trying to keep, you know, project a little bit vertically off the ground, so that way you can get this leg to strike back as opposed to just pushing forward. Now you are on grass, which kind of can make it a little bit harder sometimes, but that's definitely something we want to eliminate, is that flat foot, the foot going flat. I'd have to spend a little bit more time analyzing this, but I think when your head is forward like this, if your head is forward and you're not getting enough vertical lift, you don't have the time to get that leg under you. So the foot just goes flat. And if you're not paying attention to getting this leg to strike back, then it goes forward. So definitely want to eliminate that forward motion right there, which is within your control. Make sure you're not reaching forward into the ground. And it's going to be easier if your head is more on top of your shoulders rather than forward. Because remember, if our center of mass shifts forward because our head is forward, where are we going to contact? Probably forward. Okay? So let's work on getting that head in line with the body, trying to always strike within that line of the body, and see if that helps. Okay, where are we at here? Kyle J. Sun. This looks like a nice place to train. Feet look pretty good. Arms look pretty good. Yeah, man, I think this looks pretty good from what we can see. Let's look at the acceleration a little bit. Looks like you're tilted a little bit, maybe. So, kind of want to figure out what's going on with that. See what I mean? It looks like there's kind of a funky angle there. You get a little lateral on this leg right here. See how it's kind of coming out, which can lead to some adductor issues. Usually that's because if you fire too low and you don't have enough space between your body and the ground, your leg will have to fire out to the side. So just pay attention to that. Make sure you're not going too low and trying to stay too low, and instead letting yourself rise, because you see you get a little bit lateral again here. Like that. That means your legs are trying to find space between you and the ground, so let's see. Hang on. Yeah, I think this looks pretty good though overall. Just make sure that when you're coming out of your acceleration that you're not trying to stay too low, because that's going to make you go lateral, and that puts a lot of pressure on your adductors and all those muscles of the kind of inner leg. Wonder if my GoPro will come back to life. Wonder if it just overheated. Yeah, you want to have a straight neck. That's the idea. And like it said here, a little bit better posture would help. Yeah, you want to have your neck in line with your spine. More so than having it, like needs to be up or needs to be down. It's more about finding a position where the head is in line with the spine. All right, we got Rishav here. A little bit hard to see because the video is kind of grainy. I think some of the quality was lost in transmission. I would just say it looks like you're trying to reach out in front of the body a little bit and kind of like swing a little bit too horizontally. See that? I think we're getting a little too much leg whip. Trying to kick the leg forward too much. See this foot movement? So, Rishav, I would just focus more on trying to drive the leg or strike the leg into the ground vertically, rather than kicking the foot out and then swinging it back. Just from here, boom, set that foot down. Okay? From here, boom, set it down. We don't want to be kicking the leg forward too much and swinging too much at the knee like we see here. Because the thing is, how it kind of looks like on some of the strides you're sort of cycling in the air and not going as far. We'll never be able to produce as much force into the ground this way as we will this way. It's a lot easier to produce force vertically, so when you get excessive horizontal movement and you're trying to kind of whip the leg too much, that's what I see, at least. What happens then is you're just not able to produce as much force. You're not going to go as far each step, and you'll just be sort of spinning your wheels. So, Dano, thanks for the super chat. Dorsiflexing is basically picking your toes up. But should you dorsiflex your ankle all the time or only before ground contact and then relax after ground contact? So I tend to focus on keeping the toes up and keeping the foot dorsiflexed, especially when coming off the ground. Because the thing is by kind of tuning into dorsiflexion as your foot's leaving the ground, it'll help set up that foot for the next stride, because by the time you feel that happening, you know, your legs are going to be cycling and getting ready for that next ground strike. So I kind of focus on dorsiflexion to pull the foot off the ground, and I find that that helps get the ankle prepared for that next stride, and it also helps get the foot off the ground sooner, instead of focusing on, like I've said, you know, pushing behind you or pushing down into the ground, and that's going to be more plantar flexed. I focus on dorsiflexing to pull that foot off the ground, and that helps create tension through the leg. It also, I think, this is just an opinion, but I think there's probably some reflexes involved where when you dorsiflex, it helps initiate hip flexion at the same time. Like if you're to stand there, if you guys just stand up right now, stand on one leg, and then, or stand on two legs, but then on one of those legs, you kind of flick your toe up, you kind of flick your foot into dorsiflexion, it's going to feel like your leg wants to flex the hip. So I think there's something to be said for tuning into dorsiflexion. By you dorsiflex to pull your foot off the ground, and that's going to help initiate hip flexion sooner, which is going to help get that stride cycle to happen quickly and you know, be pretty efficient. I would say you don't have to focus on it so much when you're about to strike the ground, but if you find that you're always plantar flexed and your toes kind of stabbing into the ground when you hit the ground, that might be something to consider working on, like focusing on keeping dorsiflexion as you strike the ground. But for me, it's just hard to focus on that when I'm sprinting. It's easier for me to think about things of getting off the ground than getting onto the ground. So maybe that's one reason why I like to focus on dorsiflexion to get the foot off the ground. But I would try it and see what you think. All right. But if any other questions pop up as a result of that, let me know, Dan. All right, so now we're on Tariq, and then we'll have Brendan. Then Adam, will get to your video. I know you've been waiting this whole time, so sorry it's taken so long. I chose a random order, so there's no specific preference involved here. It's just sort of how the cookie crumbles, you know. Here's another video that I think got sort of messed up when I downloaded it, but so to me this looks like maybe a little bit of force is lacking. You might need to get a little bit stronger because can't totally see, but it just looks like Tariq, you're not getting a whole lot of propulsion each step. So I don't know if you're trying to be quick, but I would focus more on just being forceful and aggressive and like really trying to launch your body. So from here to here, you're really trying to launch your body out, you know, and then immediately bring that foot down, launch again, foot down, launch again, and focus on that for the first like 10 meters. And that's going to help you build up momentum, because it looks to me like you're able to get pretty, you know, you're probably okay at getting, or pretty good at getting quick. You can get into a good stride rate. but it doesn't look like there's a lot of propulsion behind it early on. So I would focus more on maybe having big arm swings, trying to really launch yourself for those first few steps or through the first 10 meters, focusing on being forceful, and then letting that forcefulness transition into a more quick stride. If you try to be too quick too soon, for some people, that's going to cut their strides short, and they're not going to be able to, build up enough momentum to really accelerate through the whole race. Now, as you're getting up into your sprinting here, pretty good, but it looks like it's a little in front of you maybe. So once again, we want to stay forceful, because remember, if we produce force into the ground, that's going to allow our body to go like this. And our body is going to ride a wave where we will get up off the ground, reach a high point, and then come back down to the ground when we strike it. If that curve is too flat, we're not able to get our legs under us, and instead we hit in front of us. This is sort of between frames, so I'm not totally able to see, but you just want to make sure that you're forceful enough so that way your body can get up off the ground and get this leg to come under you rather than landing sort of out in front of you. And that's going to start from the beginning of forcefully trying to launch yourself up and out. That from here, you want to launch yourself up, and then up, and then up, and then up, and it's going to get more vertical as you go, but the whole time you're still trying to propel yourself off the ground. And I think if you focus on being more forceful during acceleration, it's going to help you. Let's see. All right. So hopefully that helps, Tariq. Sip some more water. My throat's over here getting cooked by these live streams. The last live stream I did, I was like, man, did I eat a bunch of saltines or what? Because talking for this long is like, man, really gets your throat. Let me sip some water. Here we got Brandon Hoyer. Let's see. I think I got these same spikes. All right, Brandon. So, first thing I see is this arm. Your right arm is not getting to the front side. Your elbow is probably like here, when we want to be more like that. Not exactly, but you kind of get the point, right? We want to get a little bit of separation between the elbow and the torso. Should get some separation here. If that arm does not come to the front side, it can sort of interrupt the leg motion a little bit and cut off your range of motion. So it looks like you're trying to keep your frequency really high, but I would try to let your elbow get a little bit more separation to the front side. Just sort of let that arm swing and see if that helps. Your leg motion looks pretty good. I'm not saying that you got to try to get your arm up really high or anything like that, or that you need to work hard to do that. It's just, I think there should be some amount of separation between the elbow and the torso. And to me, this is just a little cut off, and I think it's going to inhibit something else in the body. Can't tell you exactly what, but my gut feeling is that when that arm gets cut short, it's going to hold something back. Because remember, the arms contribute weak forces into the ground. So as your leg is striking, and producing most of the force, your arm is swinging down, and that's going to contribute a little bit of force to that stride. And if we cut that arm off, and we're not able to accelerate that arm down as much because it's going through a shorter range of motion and it can't accelerate as much, it's possible that we're losing some ground force when we strike the ground. So just try to let that arm get to the front side a little bit more by just relaxing and letting it happen. If it doesn't seem to be any better, then scrap it and throw it in, throw that cue in the trash. But I would try that, just so that you're getting access to that full shoulder range of motion, which is going to help make sure your hip range of motion is okay, as your shoulders and your hips are going to counterbalance one another and sort of work together in certain ways. If the shoulder range of motion is cut off, it can mess with the hips. So try to let that arm open up. Dang, Zambuza, you're running a 400 while fasted? Is it still Ramadan? I think it is. That's tough, dude. I mean, you'll be all right. I've run 400s in practice fasted, but man, it's not that fun. All right, Adam. We finally got to your video. Let's see. Am I able to... Unfortunately, I can't seem to adjust the size here, but... So Adam, I think you run what, 10:51? So Adam's probably the fastest guy in the chat right now. See how Adam is getting good separation between his elbow and his torso here? Let me zoom in. See that? He's getting full access to his shoulder range of motion by getting, and we can see that because he's getting that elbow separation. And that's going to allow him to swing this arm forcefully down. This arm is coming down forcefully as this foot is. See? Boom. And that timing is on point. Whereas if he had cut his arm off short and the timing got screwed up, probably wouldn't be producing as much force. And because of the force he's producing, that's putting all these muscles on stretch. They're getting to the front side. Nice big knee drive. And then he's able to continue that and continue to put a lot of force into the ground and run fast. Now I would say this is on the verge of becoming too far back, like as far as your posture is really good right here. But for anyone watching, if this knee were to come higher, your pelvis would have to tilt back and your posture would have to tilt back. You're not doing that, so it's all good, but that's just something you want to pay attention to in people who have really high knee drive because they're really forceful. Sometimes it can be easy to lose that posture and end up leaning back a little bit. You're not doing it here, so no worries, but just something to kind of keep in your back pocket and pay attention to, that you don't want to end up leaning back, because sometimes the force you produce, that kind of the rotational effects of putting force into the ground, your abs have to work pretty hard to maintain your posture and your pelvic tilt and everything. But I mean, this all looks pretty good. I would say your hands are closed off. If that feels fine, if it feels like you're nice and relaxed, then don't worry about it. If you ever feel like you're tightening up when you're running, consider running with maybe your hands a little more open, but frankly, I think this is working for you. And as long as you're not trying to overdo your knee range, like your knee drive, and you're just letting it happen, I think this looks quite good. See how that foot's coming down? He's putting force down into the ground. And then he's picking that knee back up, bringing that foot forward again, or bringing the leg forward and ready for another strike. So I think this looks pretty good, Adam, quite frankly. But yeah, I tend to struggle a little bit too with that, where at the end of my race I tend to lean back, and so I know how it feels. See, exactly. By putting that force into the ground because you're attacking the ground or punching the ground as hard as you can, that's leading to a high knee drive. You're not driving your knees. You're just having that happen as a result of being really forceful. So that's what we want to see, is we want to see the force we put into the ground lead into the knee drive, not the knee drive be created artificially just because we're trying to get our knees up for some odd reason. So awesome stuff there. I think you're on the right track for sure. I think this is one of your teammates. Looks like the same exact place, just lacking a green cone. Got the free lap out. So I would say this is a little bit more horizontally oriented compared to Adam. So I don't think there's too much over pushing going on here, Kyle, but as the foot swings out in front of you, you know, it's still coming down under you pretty well. But I'm just a little concerned that we're on the verge of becoming too horizontal and sort of risking landing too far in front of the body. So this is one of those situations where, once again, I would say we want to really focus on putting that force. That's a horrible arrow. We want to focus putting on the force down rather than trying to just swing the legs forward and backward. We want to be striking down. Can probably let this arm looks a little bit tight here, like maybe a little bit tight in the shoulders, or maybe your traps are tightening up and kind of elevating your shoulders. So we want to let these shoulders relax, let this arm get a little bit more separation, kind of like what we saw with Adam, where he's got that good arm separation. We want to let that arm range of motion go, paired with launching that leg down. As you see here, the shoulder joint is essentially not moving at all. There's almost no angulation of the shoulder joint here from here to here. And know what that's paired with? Not much angulation of the hip. So let's get these shoulders going through a little bit more of a full range of motion while also trying to be more vertically oriented with your legs. But I wouldn't change much. It's just a subtle difference that we want to see here, Kyle. So nothing drastic, just subtly different. So Kyle is officially the fastest man in chat right now. Adam held the title for one video, but let's see. Is he a little taller? He's 5'7", really. Adam, are you more muscular? You look like you might be a little more like densely built. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like it's nothing drastic. And a lot of this stuff, you know, I pointed out because we're talking about technique, but there's a difference between seeing something that could be changed versus deciding to change everything. So some things may not look like they are 100% optimal, but depending on the individual, there's differences. So, for example, okay, so Kyle's much lighter than Adam. I'm more like Adam. I'm a little bit taller. I'm like 5'11", but I'm 180, 185. For us, because we have more mass, we have to really overcome gravity, because the effect of gravity is going to be greater on us than someone who's 130, 150 pounds. So someone who is lighter, like Kyle, can get away with more horizontally oriented leg motion because he doesn't have as much gravity to overcome in the vertical, in a vertical vector of force or whatever. So because he's lighter, he doesn't have to overcome gravity as much in this vertical plane. So he can get away with not being as vertical with his strike and be more, maybe a little bit more biased toward horizontal. Whereas if you're a heavier athlete, you have to work harder to overcome gravity, because gravity is the strongest opposing, like force, so to speak. So that's where things get a little bit interesting when you individualize it too, because lighter athletes might be able to get a little bit more horizontal, whereas heavier athletes are going to really have to focus on overcoming gravity. And the consequences of a heavier athlete being too horizontal is probably going to be stronger than the negative consequences of a lighter athlete doing that. All right. My GoPro died sooner than my throat, but my throat is on its way out too. So we got our last video here. Adam Rodriguez. Got to give this man props for training in this park here. He doesn't have grass. I don't know if we can consider, got a little bit of grass, but this man is out here working hard even when all he has access to is a dirt lot. So we got to give this man credit here. All right, so Adam looking good on this. And this leg is, pretty much just striking back. There's a little bit of that forward motion right there, but still gets it down in time. Winding the leg up, striking back. Nice. Right here is where it starts to get a little bit funky. See how we're getting this leg swinging out right here? Sorry, this leg, this foot. See this foot swing before it comes down? This is where we want to start allowing our posture to rise more. Because remember what I said earlier, if we try to stay too low, typically that makes the foot swing forward more. So basically from here, Mr. Rodriguez, we want to allow ourselves to get into a more vertical posture and continue to rise until upright sprinting. And if you find that your foot is going flat like this, it's a sign that we're probably trying to be a little bit too low, either with our head or our spine, and maybe pushing a little bit too horizontally as opposed to getting a little bit more vertical lift. So that's something that I would suggest for you. It's hard to see down here, but that's the main thing, is just allow yourself to rise, because your early acceleration is great. And look, you rise, but then that rising sort of gets cut off, and then you go flat-footed. So you want to continue to allow yourself to get up. And in a dirt lot, you're going to rise sooner than on a track, so keep that in mind. If you're running on dirt, you don't have as much traction. Going to be harder to put as much force into the ground, so you're going to have to rise a little bit sooner. So anyways, if you see your foot coming flat, just work on getting a little bit more vertical with your posture, and you should be good. All right. Well, that was a nice marathon of videos. Let's see. when someone compares their own videos, they should compare them to someone with a similar build. Yeah, probably. If you're 5'10", 170, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, exactly. I would say so. If you're, it's probably best to look at people who are anatomically similar to you, so that way, you know, you're looking at someone who has to solve a similar problem. If you think of sprinting as solving a problem or solving a set of problems, it's going to be a different set of problems to solve if you're 5'2", 90 pounds versus if you're 6'5", 220, right? Limb lengths, leverages, and then of course there's always differences with, you know, where does a muscle insert? How long is someone's tendons? How much, you know, that sort of thing. But we don't need to dig into the weeds too much in that regard. The main thing is, yeah, you should probably focus on athletes who are more similar to you than dissimilar. But I would also look at what are the common themes between athletes of all different builds. So that way you can narrow down to some of the really core fundamental aspects of what it takes to run fast, you know? So, should you get weightlifting shoes? I mean, they're nice. I don't know where mine went, so I haven't been using weightlifting shoes, but they'll definitely feel more stable compared to like running shoes, you know? Sorry that my GoPro died. I'll have to figure something else out. Maybe I'll have to just buy like just a regular webcam or something that doesn't overheat. But I think that's all for now, guys. So I appreciate y'all checking in. I think the next one that I'm going to do will be maybe go for the program review, because I was not expecting it to be as close when I did those polls on YouTube and Instagram. I was not expecting it to be so close as far as like 50% to review technique versus reviewing programs. So maybe next time I'll do that. So if you guys want to submit a program, keep an eye out for that. Eventually I'm going to start doing members only streams, but when there's only like, you know, not that many people, I'd like to wait till there's a few more people. So as people join, like Dan got a membership, I greatly appreciate that. As people join, we'll start doing some members only streams and things like that, so we can, you know, hopefully help you guys as much as possible with whatever's troubling you or whatever you're working on. You know, my goal is to help you guys as much as I can. Yeah, that's about it. So I'm going to go get ready to go do a workout. And I appreciate all you guys. Thanks for watching. I know we all have busy lives and things we got to do. So the fact that you spend a little time here it's, you know, I definitely appreciate it. And I thank you guys for all your support. So until next time, feel free to email me, Cody@sprintingworkouts.com. But I will talk to you guys later. Cody Bidlow with sprintingworkouts.com. Signing off.